All right, let's keep the show on the road here. I'm absolutely delighted. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Rebecca Patterson. I'm Vice Chair of the Bretton Woods Committee. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today with World Bank President Ajay Banga. And we're going to spend the next half hour or so talking about how he's transforming the World Bank, right? Easy, no pressure.
That's the setup?
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to explain step by step how it's happening. So, I grew up in the private sector. I'm coming down today from Manhattan. And when I think about multilateral institutions, the word efficiency doesn't always come first to mind. But I feel like one of your North Stars for the World Bank has been creating efficiency, not just in name, but in execution, in the day-to-day work of the World Bank. I think we heard about it last week with an internal reorganization that was announced. We are seeing some evidence of it, but I would love for you to give us a progress report, because we know that changing a culture, changing the inner workings of any organization, private or public sector, is really, really hard to do. Yeah. So how are you doing it? How's it going?
Aside from my envy that you just came from Manhattan? No,
it's overrated.
That's where I live, for God's sake, on weekends. He lives there too. First of all, thank you guys for having me this evening again. Apparently every one of these meetings we get together. The efficiency question has got lots of parts to it. I'm going to pick 3 or 4 that I think are the most interesting and substantive. And the first one is, it used to take us 19 months on the average to get a project from discussion to approval by the board. And if you think about 19 months to get from discussion to approval, and that's before you start construction, then if you think about a democratically elected government at the other end that's got 4 to 5 years in its term, you're 2 years into the first term before a project is approved, let alone before a shovel breaks the ground. And to me, that's an inappropriate way of working with this topic. You lose people's attention. So we've gone now to 19 months is down to a little over 12 on the average already. But inside the 12 are projects that I don't think I can speed up, like a hydroelectric dam, which will take 3 years to get approval, because it's complicated in its construction, but also its environmental and safety kind of challenges around a hydroelectric dam. Important, but difficult to do, high risk in that sense. And then there's health clinics in Kenya that are getting approved in 30 days. So I want more of the 30 days ones to come through, but not at the cost of chasing a number down on a weighted average basis. Trying to get the right thing done here is to get to the right combination of this mix. I think somewhere around a weighted average of 10, 11 months will be a good number, and focus on a bunch of projects done and approved in 30, 45 days, and a bunch that take longer.
So what specifically, what specifically did you have to do to move the needle there?
You have to do, first of all, a risk-adjusted classification of how much in-depth investigation from environmental and safety frameworks do you need for a low risk, like a clinic in Kenya versus a hydroelectric dam.
So right-sizing the work for each project.
Yeah, we used to kind of do one size fits all for that, this kind of stuff. Second is the number of people involved and clearances. As you know, in all institutions, private and public, people tend to get involved beyond what need to be involved. And you've got to just sort of...
Shocking.
Yeah, you've got to make sure that you remind people that they don't need to be involved in this one. And then it does lead to a catharsis. Yeah. So there's that going on, and a mix of those kinds of things. The second thing that is interesting, which people used to complain about, is, the World Bank Group has got 5 parts to it. There's the IDA, which is the poorest countries, IBRD for the ones that have come out of the poorest situation, IFC for the private sector, MEGA for guarantees, and ICSID for the settlement of investor disputes. And as you can see, we love our acronyms, and we have a vice president for acronyms hiding somewhere in the building. And one day I'm going to find the guy or lady and shoot them. But then while they're around, they keep generating these acronyms. So we got these 5. On the ground in many countries, that would mean multiple country people to deal with. For a client most projects end up being public-private partnership in some way. Imagine having to go through the public side of the bank, separate from the private side of the bank, different due diligence requirements, different underwriting, different people to talk to, different time frames they worked with. We're kind of going through that, and now in 40 countries, we have one country manager. All countries will be one country manager by the end of this fiscal year. So that will change the client equation with us.
Oh, huge.
That's a big difference.
Yeah.
The same way, in the middle and back office, we kind of put together the CFO's office. One treasury is coming together. So the natural hedges inside our treasury books of different parts of the book will come to play. We'll be able to leverage the balance sheet better. We're putting together our knowledge bank, which is a big move. So to me, yes, we're a money bank, but even more a knowledge bank than a money bank. Because our years of expertise, we've got fabulous people who have lived and worked in so many countries in the world and have experience on the ground in building a dam and building a road and building a skilling institute and investing in the private sector and creating a guarantee. But then if they are in different segments, you again get disjointed knowledge.
Yep.
We kind of put that all together, and every vertical, like say prosperity, will have two sets of people. One dedicated to regulatory policy and getting it changed to make it business friendly and governance kind of top of scale. Another one dedicated to what I call stealing shamelessly. And for a banker to use the word stealing shamelessly is not the world's best words to use, but they mean everything correctly. For example, if you've done something in a country and it works well, I don't see the reason to reinvent the wheel in 25 other places.
Yes.
We should be able to take that and cut, paste, copy, cut, paste, copy, and then amend for local circumstances. So I'm not being naive about this, but what you do in the private sector is you productize things. We individualize things currently. That's not a good thing. So I'm trying to create these two groups of people, two different skills. One working on regulatory policy, thought leadership, cutting edge technology in that space, and one working on stealing shamelessly and duplicating.
We call that leveraging on Wall Street.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
We would
because
never.
If you called it stealing shamelessly, people would know the truth, right?
Yeah.
So I came out of that world, don't worry.
So can I go back for a second? So with the knowledge, so this is, I
I'm going
think
to get killed for this.
AI is creating so many cool opportunities, and you know this world better than most, in terms of capturing that knowledge, right? People who spent their lives at the World Bank or in the World Bank institutions, and they retire, and that knowledge walks out the door with them. How do you make sure you capture that as part of this effort? Are you using any digital tools or AI to try to create some system where someone can type into their Claude or GPT or whatever and say, show me this thing I want to leverage?
Yes, that work has progressed quite a bit. And in fact, there's a bunch of people working on, I've created a kind of an innovation lab inside the institution and have incented people to work in teams and come back with ideas, and we judge them and award them prizes, which includes money to actually get it implemented inside the bank. And so I've taken a pool of money and kept it at my level and used that for this. A number of those ideas revolve around AI for a number of things: knowledge, procurement, judging a risk on a project by monitoring everything from satellites to social media to grievance letters to things of that type. Some really cool ideas coming back from people in the system.
Yeah.
And so that's a good thing. There's all that's going on. I think the last thing I'd say on efficiency is that we've done all these things, but we're also working, I think, better with the other MDBs, which is a big part of what I need to get done. I know you guys had Doug and Shriti and others up on the stage just now about the private sector lab, but even for a minute on the public side, in the past, when we got a project and we needed it to be co-financed by two others, we'd have to go and find those two and get them to agree to come in. Then the client would have to go through 3 project approvals, 3 due diligences, and that. Imagine if you're dealing with Tuvalu, which is 11,000 people on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. They don't have people to deal with Asian Development Bank separately from the Australian Development Corporation, separately from the World Bank. So now we're trying to do what we call full mutual reliance frameworks, FMRF, Mr. Acronym. And it took me a little while to figure out they were talking about the same thing I was, but I finally cracked the code the other day. And they said, oh, that one. I said, oh, that's what you're talking about. I got it. And so now that thing the idea is that if you're co-financing, if I'm doing the project underwriting, ADB will accept it. If they're doing it, I'll accept it. We decide who's leading.
Yeah.
And one guy does the underwriting, one due diligence, one procurement process, one everything. In the same way, that co-financing, now there's a digital platform we've launched. You can put the project into it. All the MDBs and the regional development banks, KFW, AFT, all see it. We co-finance one time. It's one bid. The client doesn't need to go through 7 hoops.
That's great.
So it's efficiency in the bank, but it's also efficiency across institutions for the client's point of view, from their eyes in.
That's great. So I want to pivot. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and there's so much I want to cover. When I was here this past spring, there was some discussion around nuclear and discussion obviously around
I told
energy
you I'm
security.
going to get it done. Yes,
and
yes.
you did. Yes. So June,
Although it did
right?
cost me a few hair and
Well, we can't see, so you don't need to tell us.
that's too much information for you.
Yeah. So
There's a lot going on here.
I'm sure there's tons. So the partnership with IAEA announced in June, that was a step forward on nuclear. Energy security is a big part of what you're focused on.
Yeah.
The Mission 300, getting electricity to 300 million people in Africa by 2030. Give us a progress report. How's it going? What's next on the list?
So the whole energy thing was, I just think that if you focus on jobs for young people, which is the North Star we've been pivoting the bank to for the last year and a half. Not that we don't care about climate or gender or schools or skills, but all of these have to have a higher purpose. Because if these young people that are coming through the pipe in the emerging markets, which is 1.2 billion young people, will become 15 to 18 years of age in the coming 12 to 15 years. They're gonna want a job.
Yeah.
Because it's the only way they're going to get not just earning, but dignity.
And if they don't have a job, they'll leave the country.
No, either they will do bad things locally, or they will leave the country and become illegal migrants, or that country loses the chance for its own future. And by the way, for us in the developed world, if those were instead channeled into productive growth, think of the future consumer markets. What happened in Asia for the last 30 years could happen in Africa if we tried.
Right.
And Africa will be bigger than Asia if you think about it carefully.
So
the way
energy
the dynamics
is
are.
table stakes.
If you don't have electricity, what are we talking about?
Right.
What clean air, clean water, healthcare, education? Everybody runs around with their hair on fire on a single cause. I'm climate, you're gender, I'm air, you're water. Yeah, like who gives a damn? What really matters is I need clean air and clean water when I'm growing up. I need healthcare and education. But when I'm grown up, I need the dignity and opportunity of work. Whether I work for you or I start my own business. That's what we're focusing on. Electricity is table stakes for that. We went and said we'll connect 300 million people with the African Development Bank to electricity, not one light, one fan. Productive levels. Computers, refrigerators, that I can open a hair salon. I was in Mozambique and drove up a road, and you could see the connections coming from us over the last few years. Was a family that hadn't yet been connected. Somebody got connected a year and a half ago and now had a chemist and a hair salon. Somebody 5 years ago had a small factory with a chicken hatchery and was providing sort of services for farmers to understand better feeding and technology and managing of chicken illnesses and the like. That's the key there. If you do that well, how do you do that without baseload power? And baseload power requires, you need affordable, accessible baseload power, and you need to do it in a way that manages emissions responsibly. If you do it the other way around, you don't really get easily to baseload power. Secondly, you cannot sit with a straight face and tell me that if Senegal has the opportunity for natural gas in its soil and has got it, I can't find a way to tell them, I won't help you do anything with this. You got to do solar and wind. While we in the Western world produce it and consume it.
Right.
And I think if natural gas is a natural transition fuel as part of your nationally determined contributions to manage your transition, then that should be a fair thing across the world and not unequally applied in different places. If in the process you build a new dependency in a country on importing gas, that's a bad idea. But if they have the resource, so for that country, what's relevant? Is it soil? Is it solar? Is it gas? Is it hydro? So Mozambique again, they have a huge hydroelectric dam made by the Portuguese before their independence. But that same river flows through 4 or 5 sort of hills later. You could put up 3 more dams at a much lower cost because the big dam manages the force of the water, and you could generate 4 times the electricity they got today and use it to export into the regional grid all the way from South Africa, which desperately needs the electricity, into other countries. In the meanwhile, in the north of Mozambique, they have natural gas that Total and Exxon and Eni are working on. So they're the ones extracting it. We're helping with midstream and downstream. Right next to it, they've got huge solar power systems that we've helped to put up. This is a country building a diversified energy matrix that fits its needs, both for its citizenry, but also to fit into the regional grid, which creates corridors today for electricity, tomorrow for trade. And those are the kind of things we're trying to do with this. Now, in that, nuclear may have a role to play in certain kinds of countries. Those that already have an existing nuclear plant, and you could work with them to extend the life of it. Others where if the IAEA tells me that we could work with them, I want to go with the IAEA because they're the experts in evaluating safety and the right systems. And then work with them tightly. We signed an MOU with Rafael Grossi, so we basically work together on this. And I'm trying to work on the idea of small nuclear reactors with him over a period of time and with my other colleagues in the MDV world. And so that's the whole range of energy.
And what's your time frame? I mean, small modular nukes.
Modular nukes to me are somewhere between 3 and 5 years before you figure out how to coalesce around 1 or 2 technologies. Till you do that, you can't get to scale. Till you get to scale, you won't get the cost down. So this thing is kind of a circular logic. There are 5 or 6 technologies out there. You've got to stop developing new ones and try and figure out which of these are the best bet to play, coalesce around 2, get those to scale, and then you'll get it to work. You know, people don't know this story, but France, as you know, is highly reliant on nuclear power. How they got there was back in after the Second World War, and when they started going nuclear, they standardized on one kind of nuclear technology, one kind of construction. If you came to the government of France and said, I've got a whole new thingamajig here, and I can make it this way, they would say, come back after 3 years. And if I came back and said, I'm just copying what the other guy did, they would give you permission in 6 months. That's stealing shamelessly. That's really important. That's how they built their nuclear system at that time. And I think standardizing, getting costs down, and through scale, kind of what we did with, you know, computers and phones and batteries and solar cells and computers, and that's the idea.
So you said,
but you're still a few years away.
You said the word standardized, and the panel before us also used the word standardized in a slightly different context, which was the private investment lab. And we've been talking a little bit about the private sector getting involved with a number of things already. When I was coming down here today, and some friends of mine who work in investment houses that trade bonds, they were so excited about the CLO. So excited about the CLO. And I know the panel covered this in some detail, so I don't want to...
know anybody else who gets excited about a 3-letter word called CLO.
No. This was exciting because they want to buy this debt. You think about this year. This is a fascinating year, Ajay. You have emerging market bonds outperforming most developed market bonds.
Yes.
You have emerging market equities outperforming most developed market equities by a lot, partly because of the weaker dollar, but even without it, by a lot. And so the idea of having diversification and different types of instruments is exciting to people. So we heard from the previous panel, but I want to hear it from you as well. What's next? Can you scale it? How long is that going to take?
And you're going to compare what I said compared to what they said.
Yes.
So you'll know how much Doug Peterson was bullshitting you, right? So Doug and I are very old friends and colleagues. We've worked together for 25 years. And I really am grateful to all of them for doing this work for us. They've got other things they could be doing, and they're spending a lot of time, Shriti and him and others, on helping us. So don't get me wrong on the jokes, but I'm like, I've got to keep myself smiling, otherwise I'll shoot myself. So the private sector thing is very simple. There is not enough money in governments and MDBs, even earlier. Forget about today's challenged fiscal circumstances in the developed world that we're all reading about. But even if you go back 3 to 4 years, there is not enough money in government coffers and MDB coffers. If you put us all together to meet the challenges of infrastructure, healthcare, agriculture, jobs, and the like for the emerging markets. We have to get the private sector's money, ingenuity, and technology and talented people onto the table. Second, the reality is that 80 to 90% of jobs get created in the private sector. Governments enable. Early on in the development cycle, governments help to generate. But eventually, even in the United States, jobs come from the private sector. And within the private sector, the overwhelming majority of them come from medium and small scale enterprises. They may rely on large companies to get the wherewithal for them to grow, whether directly or indirectly, but that's where the jobs come from. If that informs you, then trying to plow your own furrow yourself is not going to be a good strategy. So that's where the private sector lab idea came from. How do we catalyze the multiples of money that we need? Today, this year, we've mobilized 69 billion of private capital, and another 70 odd billion in bonds. Private capital is bought into our bonds. That was 49 billion the previous year. Yeah, and next year it'll be 75. We've got to find a way to get to 200 and 300 and 400. And therefore, we have to think about this quantum different than doing things better next year than last year. Right? That's the insight into this thing. So this private sector lab came back with 5 recommendations, and you've heard about some of them, but the first one is relatively simple. Can I, as a private sector investor, get regulatory clarity on the ground? Will I get paid? Will I be able to take my money out? Will I be able to get labor easily? Will I get right of way to lay my digital cable? Things like that. Which we can help with, because our knowledge bank combined with our financing, where we call pay for results, is you change the law and we'll give you the money kind of thing. That's what we're doing for the 300 million being connected to electricity in Africa, for example. The second one was, even if I do this, I need political risk insurance, because governments change and they change their mind. With this thing called MEGA that we have, actually does that. We've consolidated all the insurances that we used to do in different part of the bank in one place. One system is now doing it. That's up 30%. Again, original target was to double by 2030. Shriti and I both agree that we can do that faster. And we're just going to do it one step at a time and try and get it done quicker. The third is, doing all this is great, but I have a foreign exchange problem. I'm investing in dollars, euros, and yen. I'm getting paid by a local utility in Indonesian rupiah. And my investment is a 20-year investment, and my repayments, therefore, are in Indonesian rupiahs, and that's a hedge that I cannot get. You can't get a 20-year hedge for the euro. Right. What are you going to get for the Indonesian rupiah? And so how do I cover my exposure? ISC is now up to 33% of its financing being local currency through swaps and bonds we're raising locally. We're working on local capital market development in 20 other countries with the IMF. But we've got to find more solutions, because this still doesn't meet the need of these investors. The fourth one is, you do all this, I still think the risk is here. If you take first loss, can I bring the risk down here so the investor will come? First loss as in junior equity or capped returns or whatever. So we've set up a first loss fund. I can't call it a first loss fund because that's not good marketing. So, so we called it the Frontier Opportunities Fund.
Beautiful.
Which, of course, that acronym guy called FOF, which is not a good acronym, but never mind. So we set that up with our own retained earnings to start with. If any of you have friends in philanthropy, please send them my way. This is the time for them to put their money where their mouth is, because they keep talking about incentivizing emerging market investment. Ask any private investor, first loss is the way to go at it. Mark Galogli is doing amazing work in that space. He's a part of our lab. You should get him on stage sometime. He's fun to talk to as well.
Oh, good.
And then the last item is the originate to distribute part, which Doug is leading for us. And the idea here is over time to create an emerging markets asset class, over time. Please don't, I really mean this over time. I think this is a 4, 5, 7-year effort. But we've had great progress with one securitization to test the waters. It did really well. We're trying to figure out how we can work with the other MDBs, the private sector parts of them, to originate enough flow so that these receiving entities, a pension plan, a asset manager, can see regular purchasing opportunities. And then trying to figure out if we can do this in a way where rating agencies get involved as well, and so it becomes a package security. As you know, Canadian pension plan is not going to underwrite each loan. But if you come to them and say, here's $5 billion a year of exposure to infrastructure in Africa, and it's A- paper and Standard & Poor's, God forbid, or Moody's, or the other competitors that you had. One of them underwrites this and agree to do so and give it an A- rating, and you can buy it at 92 cents on a dollar. The CIO for CPP will say, that fits my profile. That's what we're trying to get to. That's the real pot of gold at the end of the rainbow.
And you're not going to leave till that happens, right?
This is a good place to end.
So all I will say, and you know this too, there is so much demand for that. Yeah. So the sooner we can make that a reality, the better for the world. All right, it's all up to Doug.
Yes.
All right, Doug, it's on you, man. We are out of time, and I want to be respectful of your time. I want to thank you again so much for always joining us and being so candid with us, and thank everyone for being with us here today at Bretton Woods Committee at the IMF, and we'll keep the show going.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.